Hi everyone, welcome to a new week of the Panic Room, 8 to 10 minutes of pure panic while we're going through the coronavirus lockdown. And you are with me, Stephen McAlpine, and David Robertson from Third Space. And we're here to brighten your day, give you some information and maybe some things to think about in the lead up to the end of a lockdown, which we don't know when it will be. It's also the lead up to Easter week. Yesterday was Palm Sunday, or as it's been called from now on, Elbow Sunday, because you can't touch anyone with your hands. Not that that stopped the lady having a coffee yesterday who just smeared the counter with her hands and her running gear and then allowed us to have a coffee. But anyway, enough of that. Dave, it's good to see you for a start of a new week. What have we got in store today?
Well, I can talk about what we've. Oh, hi, by the way. I can talk about various things, but I do want to say something. Can I confess my sin to you?
Oh, please do, because no one else is watching this. You can tell me.
Okay. I went to the beach yesterday on the Northern Shore, and I actually went in for a swim. And there were lots of other people there, but we were all socially distanced. And there was a tannoy telling us you can go in for a swim and you can surf and you can walk, but you can't sunbathe. I just thought, I love Aussie lockdowns. They're just great. So, but I confess, I did, for the first time in 9 months, I was actually in the sea and I felt so much better for it. And I feel better now confessing it to you, Father.
Oh, that's okay. Go home and eat 6 Easter bunnies and you'll be fine.
Okay, I'm glad you mentioned Easter bunnies, because I was distraught that apparently in Queensland, let's go to Queensland. Have you ever been to Queensland, by the way?
I have been to Queensland several times. Beautiful place.
Beautiful place, beautiful people. I've only been to Brisbane and the Sunshine Coast or the Gold Coast, or I can't remember what other euphemism they call it. But both great. I would love to go inland a bit and see more of Queensland. But of course, the borders are blocked. And they were really worried about the Easter bunny not getting there. So let's have a listen to this.
Borders closed and Easter rapidly approaching, there's been concern growing about a certain visitor. Thankfully, the Premier has used her special powers.
Well, I have a very special message to the children of Queensland. I have some good news. I've spoken to the Chief Health Officer and the Police Commissioner, and the Easter Bunny has been granted a special exemption to come into Queensland and cross our borders.
That is good news. It is a first, of course. Rabbits are illegal in Queensland.
Did you know that rabbits were illegal in Queensland?
No, I didn't know rabbits were illegal in Queensland, but I do know that there is a Gold Coast and a Sunshine Coast. So a Scotsman like you should know that.
Okay.
Yeah. So.
Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you. I'm glad to be educated. But I'm going to educate you about rabbits, by the way, later on. But the Easter Bunny. Now, to me, that says so much about some of Australian society. But what does it say to you?
Well, it says a little bit that we've got the form of what Easter's about, but we don't have much of the substance of what Easter's about. So the Easter Bunny's allowed a special exemption. Easter itself had to go through an act of parliament to get in, so that we could actually have Easter services televised as work. But I heard the Australian Chief Medical Officer also say the same thing today about the Easter Bunny. And he said, because the Easter Bunny is a solo operator, he or she, you couldn't assume gender or species. So the Easter animal is allowed to come into Australia, according to the Chief Medical Officer of Australia. So how about that?
You're not quite with this PC stuff. It's the seasonal spring animal, because Easter has religious connotations for some. It's interesting. Do you know how the Easter Bunny got mixed up with Easter?
No, tell me.
No, okay. Well, it's like Santa Claus. We blame the Americans, but it came from the Germans. Okay, so German immigrants in the 1700s had this thing called the Osterhase, which means the Easter hare, who was meant to come and lay eggs at Easter time as people celebrated Easter. And that eventually came into being the Easter Bunny. I think the thing that struck me about it, though, was how people associate Easter. This is the important thing about Easter. There's an Easter Bunny. I mean, there's an opportunity there for the church to come in and say simply, actually, no, Easter is about Christ. And it's about Christ rising and so on. But I think a lot of our news media and others prefer this notion of some kind of, hey, let's make it some kind of children's fantasy. Or I mean, am I being too harsh?
Well, you know, I don't know if you are being too harsh. I think there's truth to that, because we lose something when we take away from the meaning of what Easter's about. And Wilson has been joined today to prove how light Easter has become by Easter Bunny, her himself, with a mask on. Now, I don't know, if you look at that Easter Bunny, I don't know what that Easter Bunny does the other 364 days of the year, but I wouldn't be going to see it. So that's Easter Bunny, and it just feels nice and cute. But it's interesting, isn't it? Because at the moment we've got death is there in our faces. We're talking about the issue of death, yet Easter Bunny comes to the fore, and we've got a hope of resurrection to talk about.
Yeah, and we do need to talk about that. But before we go on to that, I do really need to. I was going to buy that one, but then my wife, we were pointed out that really we should get this one, and that's because we're Sydney people, so we're slightly posher than dairy milk. So we've gone for Lindt Gold Bunny white chocolate, which is absolutely delicious. The Easter Bunny is, of course, to be eaten. That's it. Yeah, we have a lot to talk about in terms of resurrection, but I still want to go with this. Look, there's two bunnies, and when you get two bunnies together, what happens? Now, be careful, it's a family program.
Yeah, I think you might get more bunnies. I think you could get a crowd of bunnies almost as crowded as this yesterday.
Oh, ouch.
Yes, Manly Beach yesterday. Everyone out in the sun, crowding together like there's no tomorrow. Will there be a tomorrow, David?
Well, there will be, and that's why we decided not to go to Manly. We just felt the wrath of Steve upon us would be too much, so we went somewhere else that was a little less crowded. But look, let me tell you something about. I'm sorry, this is the history of rabbits in Australia. Do you know when the first rabbit came to Australia?
How do you know all this stuff, Dave? And I've lived here longer than you.
That first rabbits came to Australia in 1788 on the first fleet, and they were initially kept for meat. And there's not really any account of them for quite a while. And then by the middle of the 19th century, they became a pest, and they are a pest because the phrase "breed like rabbits" really does mean something. And there are lots and lots of different ways to try to get away from them. You know, so for example, the rabbit-proof fence to protect your people in Western Australia. It didn't work, by the way, but it did cause a really good film title. But do you know what they invented that almost wiped out rabbits in Australia?
I'm going to guess this one, and if I get it right, you can send me that chocolate bunny. I think it's myxomatosis.
You're correct. They invented a virus to wipe out rabbits, which did result in myxomatosis. And there are still rabbits, although rabbits are illegal in Queensland. I just wonder if anyone can tell us, anyone's listening to this, if they're illegal in any other state. But I thought about this in terms of what we're looking at and in terms of the virus and in terms of everything else. And do you know, there is a virus within humanity, sin, greed, everything that comes from that. And the way that God could have dealt with that is he could have just wiped us all out. So you get rid of the harm that rabbits do, you wipe them out. He didn't do that. He sent Jesus. And that's really what Easter is about. Not just Christ being raised from the dead and newness of life, but that because of his resurrection, our forgiveness and our resurrection, our life is promised to all who believe in him. And I actually think over this coming week, you and I are going to be discussing different aspects of Easter. So, the Easter Bunny, that's fine. You go with it. You eat your chocolate. I'll be eating our Lindt chocolate. You just have your common bog standard Wilson chocolate, and we will, but I think it'd be good for all of us this week just to remember what it's all about and to remember Christ. Yeah. You got anything to add before we finish?
Yeah, just that the Western Australia has taken up the rabbit-proof fence and they've renamed it the idiot-proof fence and put it around Manly Beach.
You have a thing against people from Manly, well, not Manly, from the eastern suburbs, I think. Do you not have any beaches in Australia or nobody going in Western Australia?
Yeah, but you could go for miles and not see anyone on a beach in Western Australia.
That's right. You have beaches, you just don't really have any people.
Yeah.
But and no rabbits. You've got a fence that keeps people out. Listen, folks, it's been great to talk to you. I know we muck around a wee bit with different things, but this is deadly serious, the situation we're going in. But human life is deadly serious, but it is also joyful. And we do hope you have a good Easter week. And we will see you tomorrow to discuss what is ever is on Steve's mind. At least I hope we can discuss that. Bye.
See you later, folks.